had that with P. Diddy. I went over to say hello to P. Diddy, and Jay-Z was there, and Leonardo DiCaprio was sat.
All right, I think you've dropped enough names.
And saw the body fall through looking out the window, saw the body fall, and obviously heard your interview earlier. You met P. Diddy and Jay-Z. Is that the coolest moment? Well, these two went a gangster part, yeah, full of watches, would always message me ever since we broke up, like, oh, I'm not well, he would always play with death and be like, well, I'm going to die, I'm not doing well, there's some stuff that I've definitely never spoken about to do with it. It was really severe. It was only until I saw myself after that I was like, right, I need to fix myself. So at a certain point I thought, well, I'm going to have a party for one, and that just seemed to carry on throughout. Well, 3 floors from a hotel balcony, pictures then taken inside showed the damage he done in the empty packets of over the sea drugs. He'd been drinking and taking drugs alone in his room. I saw him and get him to the Greek. I'm going to go over there and sail to him. I thought P. Diddy, so I went out to shake his hand, and I shook his hand, and I was a nice to meet, and his going but the longest hand ever. His eyes like, when is this going to end? And then the worst of it happened. There was a whole thing with Jay-Z, and I went to lean in to speak to him, but you can't lean in to speak to Jay-Z. You're not allowed to. Did you hear the latest? 50 Cent just called out Diddy. And now there's a crazy rumor going around that this whole drama is connected to the tragic death of Liam Payne in the music world. You're probably wondering how a One Direction star got mixed up in all this hip-hop chaos. Well, get ready, because this story is heating up. 50 Cent is throwing some serious shade, and Diddy's name is starting to look really bad. The gossip is blowing up fast, and you're not going to want to miss it. Liam Payne, just 31 years old, sadly passed away after falling from a 3rd-story hotel balcony in Buenos Aires, Argentina. His bandmates, Louis, Zayn, Niall, and Harry, shared a heartfelt message. We're completely devastated by the news of Liam's passing. In time, when everyone is able, there will be more to say. For now, our thoughts are with his family, friends, and fans who loved him alongside us. We'll miss him terribly. We love you, Liam. But there's more. A preliminary autopsy report says Liam died from multiple traumas and both internal and external bleeding. It's starting to get more complicated, and the story is just getting started. So let's break down what's going on with all the key players in this mess, starting with 50 Cent.
Let's look at this clip.
Hola, buenos días. Recién llamé que se me acordó. Llamo del Hotel Casa Sur Palermo, Costa Rica 6032.
¿Qué sucede en el lugar, señor?
Bueno, tenemos un huésped que está sobrepasado de droga y alcohol, y bueno, cuando está consciente está rompiendo toda la habitación, y bueno, necesitamos que manden a alguien, por favor.
Bajo efectos de alcohol y estupefaciente, ¿no, señor?
Sí, correcto.
Me dijo Costa Rica, ¿a qué altura, señor? Discúlpeme.
Costa Rica 6032.
Esto pertenece a Capital, ¿no? Entre Arevalo y Kramer.
Sí.
¿Hotel me dice? ¿Cómo se llama el hotel?
Casa Sur Palermo. Y necesitamos que nos envíen a alguien urgente porque, bueno, yo no sé si corre riesgo la vida del huésped. Está en una habitación que tiene balcón, y bueno, estamos un poco con temor de que haga algo que le ponga en riesgo su vida.
¿Hace cuánto que está ahí, o es un hotel de vivienda?
No, es hace 2 o 3 días que está acá.
Comprendo, no sabría ningún dato porque no pueden ingresar, ¿no?
No.
Notificamos a lo que es el personal de SAME.
Curtis 50 Cent Jackson went from growing up in Queens to becoming a major business mogul. He's built a huge empire with hit TV shows, vodka brands, and a strong social media presence. On the other side, there's Diddy, a legendary figure in the industry. His influence has been massive for decades with Bad Boy Records, Sean John Fashion, and Ciroc Vodka. But lately, whispers about some questionable behind-the-scenes actions are starting to cast a shadow on his empire. Then there's Liam Payne, the One Direction star most people know from the band. He tragically fell from a hotel balcony several stories high in Buenos Aires. Now, a 911 call has come to light, offering more details about what really happened. We've got the clip here. It's in Spanish, but we'll show the translation so you can follow along. Let's check it out. There's a lot more coming out now.
No, what we've heard in that 911 call is that the hotel staff feared for Liam's safety. It's not necessarily their responsibility to intervene, but they turned to those whose responsibility it would be. In one sense, this is an all too familiar scene. A pop star alone in a hotel, perhaps turning to alcohol or other substances, but also inflicting a little damage on the hotel room. That's one thing we've learned from that 911 call. And that's a familiar story. What happened next and what ultimately happened, the tragedy of what happened, well, it's a little too familiar, but it is not the way things usually go. And it's devastatingly sad. Devastatingly sad because this 31-year-old man leaves behind a 7-year-old child and, as we were hearing earlier, has been famous for more than half his life and globally famous. This is a huge loss for a very engaged generation of pop fans.
And I think what's also clear is that he himself was very open, and we saw a bit of that in Max's report about his struggles in the past with addiction, with mental health, with bullying online, with some abuse. It's sort of
911 call. Hotel staff says they couldn't get into the room because it was being destroyed. They also mention the balcony, which is kind of strange. Why bring it up unless they were worried something bad might happen? There's still a lot of details we don't know. TMZ and the New York Post shared pictures of the damage in the room, showing it was pretty torn up. They found some paraphernalia on the floor, but it's unclear if that means anything serious. The hotel staff was definitely concerned, especially with the balcony being there, thinking things could get worse. This all happened before 50 Cent got involved. He's been keeping an eye on Liam and doesn't trust Diddy. According to 50, Diddy is known for pulling in young artists like Liam with promises of fame and money, only to leave them behind when it suits him. Fans have noticed Liam's career has slowed down since he got involved with Diddy. No big opportunities, no chart-topping hits, and his social media has gone silent. It all feels off. All too familiar seeing a pop star alone in a hotel or perhaps turning to alcohol or other substances, but also inflicting a little damage on the hotel room. That's one thing we've learned from that 911 call, and that's a familiar story. What happened next and what ultimately happened, the tragedy of what happened, well, it's a little too familiar, but it is not the way things usually go, and it's devastatingly sad. Devastatingly sad because this 31-year-old man...
Again, no foul play, I think, but we're still trying to figure out, was this accidental? Did he do it on purpose? Was he on stuff that made him do it? Where did he get these substances is another big question. Many outlets trying to figure out and secure the dealer, like who gave this to him. So there's still a lot of questions regarding that. Fans are now also livid at his ex-girlfriend. Reports coming in from people saying that he was extremely overwhelmed by legal issues with his ex, Maya, before his death. And now One Direction fans are harassing her, saying it's her fault. It's getting pretty ugly there. She, didn't help matters by calling it out and making it a thing on her TikTok literally days ago, talking to the One Direction haters directly, calling them out. I hate TikTok. It never plays when you need it to play. But there it is. She was calling them out, saying, you don't know the full story, so you can't chime in on this.
And kind of break it down. So I've been seeing ones like this everywhere.
They're called.
Honestly, ones that say she needs to keep his name out of her mouth. She's obsessed, blah, blah, blah. They broke up years ago. Well, I made a 5-second TikTok about something he talked about on a podcast.
I don't even get on this. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. You can have your feelings on this, but this is where it's now getting uglier. More and more posts regarding this issue.
It's so true that even if you're famous and surrounded by people, you can still feel completely alone at times. This is something we saw with someone who struggled with health problems as a kid. He had kidney issues at just 12 years old and started boxing to protect himself from bullying at school. So when he talked about the bullying he faced online later in life, it makes sense. Those feelings of isolation and his battles with mental health and substance abuse had been with him for a long time. Even though pop stars are loved by millions, they can often feel very isolated. They deal with so much pressure, loneliness, and boredom that most fans don't see. It's a tough life, especially for these young people. There's a bigger point here about the pressure young people face, not just in music but in many other industries too. And when things end, like when the band broke up years ago, it's tough to handle. That pressure and what comes after can be harder than most people realize. What happens when the fame starts to fade and the success isn't as big, but you're still in the spotlight? It can be tough, especially when you're still dealing with personal struggles. That's when it's important to reach out to the people around you who might be going through hard times, even if they aren't asking for help. It's easy to forget that even the biggest stars, with all their fame and wealth, still face mental health issues and battles with addiction, just like the people in our own lives. We all know people who struggle with similar things: family, friends, people we care about, and it's so important to be there for them, especially during tough times. When someone famous passes away tragically, it can really affect those who are already dealing with depression or substance abuse. 50 Cent didn't just make random accusations, he backed them up with proof. He shared screenshots of messages, whispers from people who were close to the situation, and even hinted at financial records that seemed to show something shady was.
So many of you have been sending it to me. Again, I don't think there's any connection here personally, but it's just haunting and eerie to see this clip now, knowing all we did as we look back at Liam and things he said. Well, let's watch.
I had that with P. Diddy. I went over to say hello to P. Diddy, and Jay-Z was there, and Leonardo DiCaprio was sat.
All right, I think you've dropped enough names. I think people thought Prince and Brian Ferry was good. We don't need to hear about other people who are in the room. Let's just stick on the people the story's about.
Wish this guy would shut up. It's almost like he's saving Leo, which we're going to talk about in depth later today and tomorrow at Friday, 12 noon Eastern on members only section here and on Patreon. We're going to talk about Diddy and Leo. You're not going to miss it. I'll put more details in the pinned comment in the description, so check it out. Also, part 2 of our interview with Dale about Leo. Again, you're not going to miss these two. We'll talk about this as well. I digress. Let's go back to the clip.
So I went over and I thought, I was trying to think who's the easy target in this scenario, who's the one that you go to say the hello, and I'm thinking, I saw him and get him to the Greek, I'm going to go over there and say hello to him. So I thought, P. Diddy.
To Diddy.
So I went out to shake his hand, and I shook his hand, and he just, I was, oh, nice to meet you, and he's just going, but the longest handshake ever. And I'm like sat there just looking in P. Diddy's eyes like, when is this going to end? And then the worst of it happened. There was a whole thing with Jay-Z, and I went to lean in to speak to him. But you can't lean in to speak to Jay-Z. You're not allowed to lean in. And his bodyguard just like shoved me like this, and I went flying across the room. And I was like, right, I'm just going to go and sit over here with Eddie Goldman. Thank you, that's enough. Very awkward moment.
Strange, man. This is
going on. His accusation? That Diddy was allegedly involved in some questionable activities. There's a lot of talk right now about Liam's career being messed with. Fans think Diddy played a role by giving him bad promotion, poor advice, and pushing him into an image that didn't fit. Now, people are wondering if this is just a battle for power in the music industry or if something darker is going on. It's such a tragic situation, and while it doesn't seem like foul play, there are still so many questions. Was it an accident? Did he do it on purpose? Was he using something that led to it? And where did he get those substances from? Lots of people are trying to figure out who gave them to him. On top of everything, fans are turning on his ex-girlfriend, Maya. Reports say Liam was overwhelmed with legal issues involving her before his death, and now One Direction fans are blaming her. Things are getting really ugly, especially after she made a post about it on TikTok just days ago. The whole situation is spiraling out of control. Things are getting messier, with some One Direction fans really going after Maya. They are calling her out, telling her to stop talking about Liam, even though all she did was post a short TikTok about something he mentioned on a podcast. People are saying she's obsessed and needs to let it go, even though they broke up years ago. Maya's just trying to explain that fans don't know the full story and shouldn't be jumping to conclusions. It's sad because Liam had a 7-year-old son, and he was only 31 when he passed. On his birthday this past August, he talked about his son, whom he shared with his ex, Cheryl Cole. He mentioned not getting any dad socks yet, but he was looking forward to talking to his son later. It's a heartbreaking situation, especially when you think about how young he was and the family he left behind. It's really heartbreaking because
manager reportedly called 911 and reported that there was a guest who was at the hotel who was overwhelmed with drugs and alcohol. That was the way it was described. He was smashing up the hotel room and they needed assistance. So this was an emergency type call. The operator questioned the claim about drugs and alcohol being involved, but the manager seems to insist that there are drugs and alcohol, this guest is out of control, and we need help and assistance here. Then expressed concern that the guest's life was at risk, noting that the individual had been staying in the room for 2 to 3 days. This is Liam who they're talking about, and mentioned that the hotel balcony was a concern. So you can imagine that maybe the scenario is playing out and he's threatening perhaps jumping from the hotel balcony. So a very, very serious sort of frenetic call in these final moments. And by the time the cops arrive, Liam had fallen or jumped to his death from that 3rd floor room. It was about 40 to 45 feet high, and he perished from the injuries that he sustained during that fall. We're getting a picture that's starting to be painted, right, Charlie? Like, we've heard that witnesses in the lobby beforehand saw him behaving erratically, smashing a laptop, maybe having to be escorted up to his room because he was causing a scene in the public lobby, carried up, escorted up. In any event, he was not in the right headspace in the moments before his death. This seems to lend credibility to the idea that this was an impulsive act rather than something that was considered for a long time, which suggests that drugs and alcohol may have been involved. He battled these demons.
Right. I mean, yeah, he did battle these demons publicly for years. And he had, friends and family and girlfriends and ex-girlfriends talking about their concern for the pop star who had obviously was going down a path. And he himself, would talk about death and just just existential type, he didn't think he was going to be around forever, apparently. And so,
he was really a tormented artist,
yes,
right? And he
yes.
had discussed openly, as you said, severe, I think he described them as severe suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
At a point in time, he had done a stint in rehab where he had maybe straightened out for a period of time. But this...
You could tell how much Liam loved his son. He didn't always show him off, but he talked about him all the time with so much love. He would always say how big his son was getting and how he looked just like him. You could see how proud he was to be a dad. This week, he said something about his son that really hit me. He said, "We need him here now, Daddy." It just broke my heart. This whole situation is so tragic, especially when you think about how it's going to affect his son and everyone else who cared about him. Liam was way too young, and addiction is a killer. It's so hard to escape. My heart goes out to him. I'm waiting for more information, but this clip keeps sticking with me. I don't think it's connected to anything specific, but it's so eerie to watch. Looking back at what we know about Liam and some of the things he said, it makes everything feel even more meaningful. Let's check out this clip. In it, Liam talks about meeting Diddy, how he went over to say hello, and how Jay-Z and Leonardo DiCaprio were also there. He dropped a lot of big names, and I think people started getting annoyed because they didn't need to hear about everyone in the room. It almost felt like he was trying to protect someone or save face, which we'll talk more about later. We're going to dive into Diddy and Leo more on Friday at noon Eastern, in our members-only section on Patreon. You definitely don't want to miss it. I'll leave more details in the pinned comment and description, so make sure to check it out. Also, part 2 of our interview with Dale about Leo will be posted soon, and that's another one you won't want to miss. But let's get back to the clip. Liam talks about trying to figure out who the easy target is in this situation. Liam told this awkward story about meeting Diddy. He saw him at an event and decided to go say hello. So, he walked up and shook Diddy's hand. But instead of a normal handshake, Diddy held on way longer than expected. Liam was standing there, staring into Diddy's eyes, thinking, when is this going to end? But then things got even weirder. He tried to talk to Jay-Z, but you can't just lean in to talk to him. His bodyguard saw Liam getting too close and shoved him across the room. Liam was like, "Oh."
Confirm it. It's like, bro, you don't show anybody's body who's unalived on the floor, even just a part of it. That's disgusting. They have no shame, TMZ. They're the worst. And they've now thankfully removed it, but still talking about it in here. TMZ has seen a photo. You showed the whole world the photo showing his body on the deck. You can clearly see his tattoos. And the previous version, which we had in our live out of accident because we didn't know what we were looking at, shame on them. They are disgusting. They have no remorse, no shame. I think legally they did finally remove it because they realized, oh crap, we can't show that. But shame on them. And sending so much love and positivity out to Liam's family, friends. This is just a heartbreaking loss that so many are still very shocked by. A lot of reactions pouring in. In fact, we just got notice as we were here, AGT, I guess BG, Britain's Got Talent is now canceled. Now, for those that don't know, they were discovered through, I guess it was the X Factor, Simon's other show. Yeah, he's now obviously, it's a loss for all these guys. It's a super big loss. This is a really sad day. This kid was way too young. I call him a kid. 31, still to me a kid, younger than me. He had so much life left. So many fans out there wanting to support him, and he was clearly struggling behind the scenes. There are clips of him now talking about how he held it well. I send so much love to his family, especially his son. This is a sad day.
Looks like they are treating it as a suicide, based on what's known, with no signs of foul play, but the story is still developing. This tragedy has also got people thinking about the music industry. Fans are starting to notice that many artists seem to disappear after working with big names like Diddy. His history with shady contracts and artists whose careers stalled is now under a microscope. Groups like Liam Payne and Day 26 are getting more attention, and people are questioning what really goes on behind the scenes. The drama is far from over. It was happening, we got it actually. People were telling us rumors before even went on TMZ, which is usually calls. I'm not trying to take credit for it, but I say that because we saw it happen live on the show yesterday, whereas TMZ was breaking the news with this very article. They showed pictures of his body on the floor. It was disgusting, absolutely disgusting of teams, and there's a lot of outrage online as there should be. TMZ has now quietly removed those images, like, well, we just showed the arm to show you that his tattoos to confirm it. It's like, bro, you don't show anybody's body who's unalived on the floor, even just a part of it. That's disgusting. They have no shame. TMZ, they are the worst, and they've now thankfully removed it, but still talking about it in here. They TMZ has seen a photo. You showed the whole world the photo showing his body on the deck. You can clearly see his. It's truly heartbreaking to see how things ended for Liam. Some people were even posting insensitive stuff about his death, not realizing how wrong it was. Thankfully, they had to take it down, but the lack of remorse is just awful. My heart goes out to his family, friends, and especially his son. This loss is still so fresh, and it's left so many people in shock. Liam was only 31, still so young, with so much life ahead of him. His fans are grieving, and those who worked with him know how much he struggled behind the scenes. There are clips of him talking about his inner battles, showing how hard he tried to stay strong, even though he was hurting deep down. Now, 50 Cent is stirring things up, calling out the shady side of the music industry. Some are praising him for speaking out, while others feel like he's just chasing attention. And then there's Diddy. His silence is only raising more questions. Is he staying quiet out of guilt, or is he gearing up for a comeback? This story is still unfolding, and it's tough to watch.